why is it that there are days when you eat like a massive heavy lunch? I mean, we are talking a huge meal that leaves you physically uncomfortable.
Right, just completely stuffed.
Yeah, exactly. And yet somehow you find yourself staring into the pantry absolutely starving just like an hour later.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
But then on other days, you might have a tiny salad, get completely consumed by a project at work,
Yeah.
and, you completely forget to even think about food until the sun starts going down.
You don't even realize you missed a meal.
Right. Have you ever actually stopped to wonder why your body operates with such extreme, almost contradictory unpredictability?
It is, honestly, one of the most universal yet profoundly misunderstood human experiences.
Yeah.
And the tragedy is really how we interpret it. We tend to view those days where we are constantly hungry as, well, as a personal moral failure.
I mean, we look in the mirror and think, I'm just weak today.
Exactly. Or we think, I simply have no self-control. I lack discipline. But the reality of what is actually happening inside of your cellular biology is infinitely more complex. And frankly, it's so much more forgiving than that internal monologue of guilt.
And that guilt is exactly what we are stripping away today.
Absolutely.
The mission of today's deep dive is to entirely deconstruct the myth of willpower. We are taking that word and all the baggage that comes with it, and we're just throwing it right out the window.
Good riddance.
Right. So we are pulling from a massive stack of research today. We're primarily diving into the mechanics of hunger and satiety to translate a core premise. And this is something that will completely change how you view your own appetite.
It really is a paradigm shift.
It is, because your appetite is not a measure of your moral fortitude. It
Right.
is a highly intricate, relentlessly persistent chemical system that has been, millions of years in the making.
And we really need to validate that struggle right up front for everyone listening.
Definitely.
Because this ancient survival system, this beautiful complex network of chemical signals that successfully navigated our ancestors through brutal ice ages.
Through famines and periods of intense scarcity.
Exactly. That system is currently misfiring on a massive scale.
Yeah.
In our modern environment, it fires the wrong time, it fires with the wrong intensity, and it fires for entirely the wrong reasons.
It's just totally out of sync.
It really is. So the mission of this deep dive is to open up the hood and explore the biological control panel of human appetite.
We are moving completely away from the cultural noise. No more moral judgments about food. We're diving straight into the hard, fascinating chemistry of why you eat what you eat.
No guilt, just biology.
Welcome to the deep dive. Prepare yourselves for a genuinely eye-opening journey into your own internal chemistry.
It's going to be a fun one.
Okay, let's unpack this. To really visualize how this appetite system works, we need to picture the human body not as a single entity, but as a massive multinational corporation.
Right. Think about a company operating on a global scale.
Okay.
You have hundreds of thousands of employees. You have a sprawling production department, complex logistics.
A maintenance crew working around the clock to repair wear and tear.
Exactly. Every single one of those departments requires a constant stream of energy to function.
Like nonstop.
Nonstop. And in an organization of that immense size, communication is the single bottleneck between success and catastrophic failure.
Oh, for sure.
Someone or some department has to be in charge of alerting the different sectors when supplies are running dangerously low.
And conversely, someone has to alert everyone when the warehouses are completely full, right? So you don't overorder supplies and bankrupt the whole system.
Precisely. In the human body, that internal mail system, the messengers carrying these critical updates across the corporate campus.
Those are your hormones.
Yes. Hormones are simply chemical messengers.
Right.
They are specialized molecules manufactured by one specific organ. They get secreted directly into your bloodstream, which acts as like the corporate highway system.
Okay, I like that visual.
And they travel to an entirely different organ to deliver a highly specific instruction. They bind to receptors on the target organ, just like a key fitting into a lock.
Wow, okay.
And when it comes to the specific departments of hunger and satiety, this sprawling complex of energy management we have, this hormonal system has two absolute main characters.
Okay, let's look at the first main character. This is the one that makes your stomach rumble audibly during a dead silent meeting.
Oh, we all know that feeling.
It's the worst. So this is ghrelin, often referred to as the hunger hormone.
Right.
But what genuinely surprised me in the research is the origin story of this hormone. Because if you ask the average person where the physical sensation of hunger originates, they would probably point to their head.
Right. They'd assume the brain just calculates that it has been a while since breakfast and generates a feeling.
Exactly. But ghrelin is manufactured primarily in the mucosal lining of the stomach itself.
The physical organ of the stomach is generating the initial distress flare.
That's wild.
It is. When your stomach is empty, the physical lack of stretching in the muscular walls, combined with, dropping nutrient levels, it triggers specialized cells in the stomach lining.
And what did those cells do?
These cells begin to synthesize and release ghrelin molecules directly into your circulatory system.
Okay, so if we track the physical journey of those molecules, they travel all the way up from your abdomen, cross into your brain, and specifically target a region called the hypothalamus.
Yes. And I really want to focus on the hypothalamus for a second because it sounds like a massive command center, but it's incredibly small.
Right. It's roughly the size of a single chickpea.
Just a chickpea. It sits deep at the base of the brain, right above the brainstem. But, do not let the microscopic size fool you.
Not at all.
It is the absolute master control center for your autonomic nervous system and your endocrine system.
It regulates your circadian sleep cycles, monitors and adjusts your core body temperature, manages your sex drive.
And critically for us today, it dictates your appetite.
So the ghrelin molecules arrive at this chickpea-sized control center, bind to the receptors, and essentially ring a massive, deafening alarm bell.
Right. The chemical message essentially translates to activity is critically low down here in the digestive tract. Systemic energy reserves are dropping. Find food immediately.
And the subjective result of that alarm bell is exactly what you feel in the first person.
Yeah.
It's that hollow, gnawing emptiness behind your ribs. It is that sudden, highly distracting, recurrent thought where you simply cannot stop picturing a sandwich.
Oh, I know that exact thought.
Right. It's the classic irritability, the feeling we culturally call being hangry.
Angry, yes.
When your brain is dedicating so much processing power to seeking food that it has literally no patience left for social pleasantries.
None at all. But ghrelin isn't just a reactionary distress flare to an empty stomach.
Okay.
It is highly proactive. It actually learns your schedule, which creates this phenomenon of clock hunger.
Clock hunger, yes.
Yeah.
The proactive nature of ghrelin is such a crucial distinction. It demonstrates how deeply adaptable our biology really is.
Exactly.
It actually reminds me of having a hyper-organized administrative assistant who is constantly anticipating your needs before you even voice them.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, let's say you work a very rigid job and you always, without fail, take your lunch break at exactly 2 p.m.
Okay.
Your body is paying close attention to that pattern. So at 1:30 p.m., your stomach proactively begins manufacturing and secreting ghrelin into your bloodstream.
Right. You are not biologically starving at 1:30.
No.
Your energy reserves haven't suddenly plummeted right then. Your body is just brilliantly anticipating the arrival of food based on historical data.
The body is literally priming the biological pumps.
Yes, it is technically known as the cephalic phase of digestion.
Okay.
By releasing ghrelin early, the body is ramping up the production of digestive enzymes, it is stimulating the secretion of gastric acid, and increasing the motility of the intestinal tract.
It's a massive evolutionary advantage to have your digestive machinery running at full speed the second food hits your mouth.
Right. It maximizes the extraction of every possible calorie.
But in the context of modern life, it means we are constantly tricked by our own chemistry.
We really are.
Think about your own daily routine. How often do you feel a ravenous, intense hunger right at noon, and you assume your body is in desperate biological need of calories?
When in reality, it is just clock hunger.
It is just a learned release of ghrelin because the clock on the wall struck 12, and your administrative assistant is preparing for a meeting that you might not even need to have.
But the hunger you feel is entirely real.
Oh, yeah. The discomfort is very real.
But the root cause of the hunger isn't a dangerous lack of cellular energy. It is simply your body's internal alarm clock going off.
Okay, so that is the voice of the empty stomach. That is ghrelin screaming that the supplies are low.
Right.
But the corporate mailroom has a second primary messenger, the absolute counterpart to ghrelin, and that is leptin.
Leptin, yes. If ghrelin is the panicked voice crying out that the production lines are stalling from lack of supplies, leptin is the calm, authoritative voice announcing that the corporate warehouses are completely packed to the ceiling.
The warehouse manager.
Exactly. Leptin is the master hormone of satiety, of long-term fullness.
Right.
And just as the origin of ghrelin surprises people by coming from the stomach rather than the brain, The origin of leptin is an absolute biological twist.
Because logically, you would assume the I am full signal would also come from the stomach, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
You eat a massive meal, the stomach physically expands like a balloon, and it sends a message saying, hey, the walls are stretched to maximum capacity down here. Please stop sending food.
Or maybe the signal would come from the intestines as the food passes through.
But leptin isn't produced in the stomach, and it isn't produced in the intestines. It is manufactured and secreted by your adipose tissue.
Your body fat.
Your body fat.
And when you take a step back and examine the evolutionary logic of this arrangement, it is profoundly elegant.
How so?
Well, we have a tendency to view body fat as this inert, annoying layer of tissue that we constantly want to get rid of, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But biologically, adipose tissue is a highly active endocrine organ. It is your body's long-term energy storage facility.
Okay.
It is the vital, life-saving reserve that allowed early humans to survive for weeks during a brutal winter when hunting and gathering yielded absolutely nothing.
Oh, wow.
Therefore, it makes perfect, flawless biological sense that the storage facility itself is the department responsible for telling the brain exactly how much reserve energy is available.
It is the warehouse manager picking up the phone and calling the CEO directly.
Exactly. The fat cells, specifically white adipose tissue, are in constant direct communication with the brain.
Okay.
And the mathematical equation governing this is incredibly straightforward.
Let's hear it.
The more body fat you have stored, the more leptin those individual fat cells produce and release into the bloodstream.
And then that leptin travels up the exact same circulatory highway to the exact same chickpea-sized control center, the hypothalamus, and delivers the opposite chemical message of ghrelin.
It binds to its receptors and says, look, the warehouses are full. We have tens of thousands of calories in long-term storage. We do not need to deploy any behavioral resources to seek out food today.
Okay, on paper, in a textbook, this is a beautiful, flawlessly self-regulating system.
It's a perfect negative feedback loop.
Right. The more stored energy you have in the form of body fat, the more leptin you produce. The more leptin you produce, the more the hypothalamus suppresses your appetite.
The body should naturally, effortlessly balance itself out, preventing anyone from ever starving or over-accumulating tissue.
But this brings us to a glaring, unavoidable reality, a massive biological paradox.
Here we go.
If more fat equals more leptin and more leptin mathematically equals less hunger, why does this elegant system break down so spectacularly in modern humans?
That is the pivotal question of modern metabolic science.
Yeah.
Because we look around and we observe that individuals with higher amounts of adipose tissue individuals who are therefore producing massive continuous amounts of leptin.
They should theoretically have absolutely zero appetite, right?
Exactly. Their hypothalamus should be receiving a constant, deafening chemical message that the warehouses are overflowing and no further intake is required.
But the cruel paradox of our biology is that very often these individuals experience significantly more intense hunger, not less.
Right.
So where exactly is the breakdown in communication happening? If the warehouse is full, why is the CEO still ordering more supplies?
What's fascinating here is the critical realization is that the problem is not a lack of the hormone itself.
Okay.
The fat cells are doing their job perfectly. They're doing exactly what millions of years of evolution programmed them to do. They're pumping out leptin in direct proportion to their size.
So the signal is being sent.
Yes. The breakdown is happening at the receiver. The brain has gone completely deaf to the signal. In the medical and scientific community, this specific phenomenon is known as leptin resistance.
Leptin resistance. To help visualize how a brain can go deaf to a chemical signal, think about living in a bustling, incredibly noisy city.
Okay.
Imagine you sign a lease on an apartment that is situated right next to a busy, elevated train track.
Oh, I've been there.
Right. The first week you live in that apartment, the noise is absolutely agonizing. Every time a train rumbles by, the windows shake, you jump out of your chair, it wakes you up in the middle of the night.
You have to pause the television every 10 minutes.
Exactly. The signal, the auditory noise, is overwhelmingly strong. But what happens after you've lived in that exact same apartment for 6 months? Or a year?
You don't even hear it anymore.
Your brain performs a miraculous feat of adaptation. It completely stops registering the trains. You have friends over for dinner, a train roars by, they cover their ears and ask, how on earth do you live with that noise?
And you genuinely, honestly do not know what they're talking about.
Right. The train is just as loud, the sound waves are exactly the same, but your brain has tuned it out.
That auditory adaptation is a perfect macroscopic analogy for what is happening on a microscopic molecular level in the hypothalamus.
Okay, connect the dots for us.
With leptin resistance, your fat cells are constantly, relentlessly flooding the bloodstream with leptin because the energy stores are chronically high.
So the chemical signal is constantly blasting the hypothalamus.
Yes, but because the brain is receiving this elevated, continuous, unyielding signal for such a prolonged period of time, we're talking months or years,
Yeah.
the delicate receptors in the hypothalamus become desensitized. They physically downregulate.
The brain essentially turns down the volume of the receptors to protect itself from overstimulation. It learns to ignore the chemical noise.
The signal is absolutely present in the blood, but the brain simply isn't processing the incoming data.
The message the stores are full simply does not register.
It doesn't. And this leads to a disastrous cascading biological fallout.
Oh, I can imagine.
If we connect this failure of communication to the broader survival mechanisms of the human body, you have to realize how the brain interprets this sudden silence.
Right.
If the hypothalamus cannot hear the leptin signal because the receptors are downregulated, it doesn't possess the cognitive awareness to think, oh, my receptors must be desensitized from chronic overexposure.
It's not that smart.
No.
Hmm.
It logically concludes, based on the rigid programming of millions of years of evolution, that there is simply no leptin in the blood.
And if there is no leptin, the mathematical equation runs in reverse, right? Zero leptin must mean there is zero stored fat.
The brain literally, genuinely believes the body is starving to death.
Oh my God. It is a state of perceived starvation amidst physical abundance.
Exactly. Despite being surrounded by vast energy reserves on the body, the brain perceives an acute, life-threatening emergency.
And when the primitive regions of the brain think you are starving, it initiates a massive, multi-pronged survival protocol to save your life.
It pulls out all the stops. First, it orders a massive, unignorable increase in hunger to force you to seek out calories immediately.
Oh.
Second, it aggressively slows down your basal metabolic rate.
So reducing your body temperature, making you feel lethargic.
Right, just to conserve whatever precious energy it thinks you have left. And third, it fiercely guards the existing fat stores, chemically locking them down and making it incredibly difficult to burn them for fuel.
Because it believes those specific stores are the only buffer keeping you alive.
Exactly.
Wait, I have to stop and ask a question that I know someone listening is shouting at their device right now.
Go for it.
The brain is housed inside the body. It is connected to every single nerve ending.
Yes.
If leptin resistance means the brain's chemical receiver is broken, why doesn't the brain just, look at the body? Why is the brain so completely foolishly reliant on this one single chemical messenger?
It's a fair point.
Doesn't the brain have a secondary backup way of knowing that we have 70 pounds of stored fat and we aren't actually starving?
It is a brilliant question, and it
Yeah.
gets to the heart of how isolated the brain actually is.
Isolated.
Yes, we imagine the brain as this all-seeing eye, intuitively aware of everything happening in the body. But physically, the brain is locked inside a dark, bony vault, the skull.
Right.
It is completely isolated by the blood-brain barrier, which is a highly selective security system that only lets very specific molecules pass through.
Okay.
The brain has absolutely no direct visual or physical awareness of the size of your abdomen or your thighs.
Wow.
It is essentially flying an airplane completely blind, entirely reliant on the instrument panel.
That is terrifying.
If the leptin gauge on the instrument panel reads 0, the pilot assumes the fuel tank is empty, regardless of how much fuel is actually sitting in the wings.
It is flying blind and trusting a broken gauge.
Exactly.
But that still feels incredibly frustrating. Our bodies evolved this intricate, deeply sophisticated communication network over millennia just to have it glitch out and break down precisely when we actually need it to regulate us.
I know, it really does.
It feels like a massive evolutionary design flaw.
It is incredibly tempting to view it as a biological failure, to be angry at our own hardware.
Yeah.
But we have to reframe this entirely. It is not a design flaw.
It's not.
No. This mechanism, the production of leptin, and the brain's capacity to become resistant to it, it functioned absolutely flawlessly for hundreds of thousands of years.
Okay.
We have to contextualize the environment in which this biological software was written. For the vast, overwhelming majority of human history, food was profoundly scarce.
Right. It was unpredictable, highly seasonal, and required immense physical labor to hunt or forage.
There was simply no such thing as chronic, long-term caloric abundance.
So the system never had to deal with a constant, never-ending flood of leptin because nobody ever stayed in a state of high body fat for years at a time.
Precisely. If an early human managed to build up a significant amount of fat during the summer, the leptin signal would rise, suppressing their appetite slightly so they wouldn't spend unnecessary energy hunting.
But inevitably, winter would come.
Right. Winter comes, the fat stores are burned, leptin drops, and the receptors reset.
The system was cyclical.
Exactly. The glitch we are experiencing today is not a failure of the software.
It is a violent, unprecedented collision between an ancient, perfectly tuned survival system and a radically new modern environment.
We have taken a biological system built for the Paleolithic era of scarcity and dropped it into a world filled with hypercaloric, ultra-processed food that is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
With absolutely zero physical effort required to obtain it.
None.
We are running a complex, modern 3D video game on a computer hardware system built in, 1995. The hardware simply doesn't know how to process the modern environment, so it overheats and crashes.
That's a great analogy.
So we have established the two main characters in this corporate mailroom.
Yeah.
Ghrelin is the alarm screaming that we're empty, and leptin is trying its best to say we're full, but the brain has put on noise-canceling headphones. But Ghrelin and leptin aren't the only ones talking. Satiety isn't just a simple binary on or off switch based on long-term fat stores and an empty stomach.
Not at all. It is a highly dynamic minute-by-minute conversation.
Okay.
Ghrelin and leptin are the lead vocalists, managing the broad strokes of long-term energy and immediate distress. But the day-to-day, meal-to-meal regulation of your appetite is managed by a deeply complex choir.
A choir.
Yes. There's a continuous, rapid-fire conversation happening between your gut, your pancreas, your fat tissue, and your brain, while you are actively eating.
Okay, so if we want to understand why a bowl of cereal leaves us hungry, but a steak leaves us full, we have to look at the supporting cast of hormones.
Exactly.
Let's examine the short-term satiety signals. If leptin is the long-term warehouse manager, who is the manager reporting on the immediate delivery truck pulling into the loading dock?
The first major player we encounter in this short-term choir is CCK.
CCK. Tell us about that.
CCK stands for cholecystokinin.
That's a mouthful.
It is. It's a fascinating, highly specialized hormone produced by the enteroendocrine cells lining the mucosal wall of your small intestine.
Okay.
The trigger for CCK is incredibly specific. It ignores water. It largely ignores simple carbohydrates.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It is manufactured and released almost exclusively when the intestine detects the physical presence of amino acids from proteins and fatty acids from dietary fats.
Wow.
When you eat a meal rich in those specific macronutrients, CCK is secreted into the blood, and it performs two critical tasks simultaneously.
It's a dual action messenger.
First, it travels rapidly to the brain and delivers a powerful immediate signal of satiety.
It tells the hypothalamus, hey, we have heavy, nutrient-dense material actively entering the digestive tract. You can turn off the behavioral drive to eat.
Exactly. And second, it acts locally in the digestive system. It stimulates the gallbladder to violently contract and release stored bile into the intestine.
Which is biologically necessary to emulsify and break down those complex fats.
Right. Furthermore, it tells the stomach to slow down its emptying process, keeping the food physically in your stomach longer.
Okay, so this is the exact biological chemical explanation for why you feel full so much faster and stay full so much longer when you eat a ribeye steak or a handful of dense almonds compared to eating an entire family-sized bag of potato chips or a massive plate of plain pasta.
Yes.
The fats and proteins in the steak physically trigger the CCK alarm, whereas the simple carbohydrates in the chips just slip right past the intestinal sensors without registering.
That's exactly it. The macronutrient composition of the food you choose dictates the hormonal response your body generates. It is a direct cause and effect.
Fascinating.
And CCK isn't working alone. Right alongside it is another critical peptide called PYY, or peptide YY.
How does PYY differ from the CCK alarm?
PYY is also produced by the cells in your lower intestine and colon in response to food arriving. But while CCK is a rapid, immediate shutoff valve, PYY has a much longer-lasting, sustained effect. Its levels rise in the blood within 15 minutes of eating, peak about an hour later, and stay elevated for hours.
Acting as a powerful, lingering appetite suppressant.
Exactly. And again, clinical research consistently shows that diets high in protein elevate PYY significantly more effectively than diets high in refined carbohydrates or fats.
Another massive biological point for protein in the battle for satiety.
Absolutely.
Now, there is a third member of this intestinal choir, and we absolutely have to stop and explore this one in depth because it connects to one of the biggest cultural phenomenons happening right now.
Yes, we do.
We need to talk about GLP-1.
Glucagon-like peptide 1. Like CCK and PYY, it is an incretin hormone, meaning it is secreted by the intestine within minutes of consuming food.
Okay, and what is its job?
Its biological job description is highly complex. It enhances the pancreas's ability to release insulin to manage the incoming blood sugar.
Right.
It powerfully suppresses the appetite signals in the hypothalamus.
Right.
And it physically slows down gastric motility, putting the brakes on the stomach so food digests at a manageable, steady pace.
If the acronym GLP-1 sounds intimately familiar to anyone listening, it is because this specific, naturally occurring hormone is the exact biological target of the most revolutionary, headline-making, culturally dominant medications of our decade.
It really is wild.
We are talking about the massive wave of new obesity and type 2 diabetes injectables, the semaglutides,
The pens you are seeing all over the news.
heavily utilized in Hollywood and completely transforming metabolic medicine.
It is a profound realization when you connect the pharmacology back to your own biology.
Yeah.
Because these groundbreaking medications, Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, they are not some alien, purely synthetic magic trick that rewires your brain from scratch.
Right.
In medical terms, they are called GLP-1 receptor agonists. Biologically speaking, these drugs are simply mimicking and massively amplifying the exact natural satiety signal that your own intestines already produce every time you eat.
Okay, going back to our corporate mailroom analogy, if leptin resistance means the CEO's office is too noisy to hear the warehouse manager,
Yeah.
taking a GLP-1 medication is like hiring 10,000 temporary interns whose only job is to stand outside the CEO's door with megaphones shouting, "The intestines are full, stop eating," until the brain finally hears the message.
That is functionally exactly what is happening.
Wow.
The drugs artificially raise the volume of the incretin signal so high that it punches right through the leptin resistance and the biological noise.
It forces the stomach to empty incredibly slowly.
And it forces the hypothalamus to recognize satiety.
That's incredible.
It beautifully illustrates how intensely powerful these natural chemical messengers are. When you synthesize and amplify them, you can create dramatic, effortless shifts in human behavior and weight management, bypassing the need for conscious willpower entirely.
Satiety really is this beautiful, intricate chemical conversation.
It is.
But this raises a completely different issue. Up until now, we have been talking purely about biological, physiological hunger. The empty stomach, the dropping cellular energy reserves, the intestinal sensors.
Right.
But we all know that human eating behavior is infinitely more complicated than a simple fuel gauge.
Oh, without a doubt.
So what does this all mean? What about all the times you find yourself eating when your body absolutely, objectively does not need a single extra calorie?
This is where we transition into the illusion of hunger.
The illusion of hunger.
As complex as the biological signaling pathways of ghrelin, leptin, and CCK are, human eating behavior is heavily, inextricably influenced by non-biological factors.
So things outside the body.
Right. Our psychology, our environment, and our social structures can completely override our physiological needs.
If we don't understand these external triggers, we are missing half the picture of why we eat.
Exactly. We can categorize these illusions of hunger into three very distinct, highly relatable archetypes.
Let's start with the one that derails everyone during the holidays or at dinner parties, social hunger.
Oh.
Picture this. You have just eaten a massive dinner. You are physically uncomfortably full. Your fat cells are pumping leptin, your intestines are flooded with CCK and PYY, your biological control panel is screaming that the warehouse is full.
Right.
But then, the host brings out a fresh tray of warm brownies or a beautifully arranged charcuterie board, and everyone at the table starts reaching for it. Suddenly, despite being stuffed, you find your own hand reaching for the tray. Why?
In our modern culture, it is so easy to label that moment as a catastrophic lack of discipline.
We beat ourselves up for being gluttonous.
We do. But if we connect this to the broader picture of anthropological human evolution, reaching for that brownie is actually a deeply ingrained, highly successful survival instinct.
Wait, really?
Yes, humans are, above all else, incredibly social primates. For millions of years, the act of acquiring and sharing food wasn't just a mechanical transfer of calories. It was the fundamental act of group cohesion.
It was how early humans built trust.
Exactly. How they solidified their place in the hierarchy and how they celebrated collective survival.
So sharing food meant you belonged to the tribe, and being part of the tribe meant you didn't starve in the winter.
Precisely. When you are sitting in a group setting and everyone collectively begins to partake in a food ritual, a very ancient, very powerful part of your limbic system lights up.
And this is a region entirely separate from your energy-regulating hypothalamus.
Entirely separate. It encodes a powerful social message. Participating in this shared ritual is essential for my status, my acceptance, and ultimately my survival within this group.
So that ancient social drive to conform and participate simply steamrolls right over the physiological satiety signals.
It crushes them. You aren't biologically hungry for the calories in the brownie. You are psychologically hungry for the social cohesion the brownie represents.
Okay, understanding that makes navigating a Thanksgiving dinner feel a lot less like a moral failing.
It's tribal instinct.
Right. But what about the hunger that hits when you are completely alone? Let's dissect emotional hunger.
This is a big one.
We need to thoroughly break down the biology of the stress response here. Because we all know that a terrible, highly stressful day at work makes you crave a double cheeseburger or a pint of ice cream, never a bowl of steamed broccoli.
Never broccoli.
Yeah.
The mechanism behind emotional eating is entirely governed by cortisol.
Okay.
When you experience stress, your adrenal glands, which sit right on top of your kidneys, release a flood of cortisol into your bloodstream. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone of the human body.
Right. Now, what is the biological function of cortisol?
Well, among its many physiological effects, it aggressively spikes your appetite.
But it does not just make you indiscriminately hungry, does it?
No, it specifically and intensely drives cravings for highly dense, hypercaloric foods.
Things that are sweet, salty, and rich in fat.
Yes. And again, if we look back in time, there is a flawless evolutionary logic to this response.
Walk us through it.
Think about what the concept of stress meant for an early human living on the savannah. Stress was very rarely a psychological burden. It was almost always an acute physical danger.
Stress meant you were being actively hunted by a predator, or you had to engage in violent combat to defend your territory.
Or you were caught in a severe life-threatening storm.
Right.
Acute physical danger requires massive amounts of immediate combustible energy to fuel the muscles to either fight or flee.
So, evolution wired the stress response to flood the blood with glucose and then demand quick, dense calories to rapidly replace the energy that was just burned in the struggle for survival.
Exactly. But here's the catastrophic modern tragedy of that brilliant system.
What's that?
Today, the things that trigger our stress response are almost entirely psychological.
Oh, right. A highly passive-aggressive email from your boss at 4 p.m.
A looming mortgage payment, stressing over a complicated spreadsheet, navigating a difficult argument with your partner.
These psychological events spike your cortisol levels just as high and keep them elevated far longer than if you were actually running from a tiger.
Exactly. But reading a stressful email while sitting in an ergonomic office chair requires absolutely zero extra physical calories.
That is the biological mismatch.
The hormonal demand for dense calories is powerfully triggered by the cortisol, but the physical, muscular exertion required to burn those calories never actually happens.
The cortisol is screaming for a donut to fuel a desperate sprint for your life, but you remain perfectly seated at your desk.
The hunger you feel is intensely chemically real to your brain, but the physiological need for that energy is a complete fabrication created by the modern context of psychological stress.
It is your physical chemistry reacting to psychological pressure.
Yes.
And then there is the third type of non-biological hunger, which in our modern screen-addicted era might be the most insidious one of all.
Boredom hunger.
Boredom hunger. I think every single person listening knows the specific feeling of walking into the kitchen, opening the refrigerator, staring blankly at the shelves for a solid minute, closing the door in disappointment, and then walking back and doing the exact same thing 20 minutes later.
We've all done it.
Your stomach isn't rumbling, you aren't stressed, you aren't socializing. So what is the brain actually searching for in that refrigerator?
When we investigate boredom from a neurological perspective, we are looking directly at dopamine.
Dopamine.
Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that acts as the primary currency of motivation, pleasure, and the reward system in the brain.
Okay.
When you are bored, sitting on the couch on a Sunday afternoon with nothing to do, your dopamine levels are circulating at a very low baseline.
And the human brain inherently dislikes this understimulated state.
Oh, it hates it.
Huh.
It is constantly actively seeking out novelty, stimulation, and reward to boost that dopamine back up.
And what is the fastest, easiest, cheapest, most legally accessible way to deliver a massive, immediate hit of dopamine to a bored brain in the modern world?
Highly palatable, ultra-processed food.
Right.
The act of eating, specifically consuming foods engineered with the perfect ratio of sugar, salt, and fat, powerfully activates the brain's reward centers.
It releases a massive flood of dopamine that rivals certain illicit drugs.
It really does. When you are wandering back and forth to the fridge, opening and closing the door, you are not experiencing biological hunger.
Your cellular energy reserves are perfectly fine.
Your brain is simply bored. It wants neurological stimulation, and it knows from experience that a handful of cookies is the most efficient pharmacological hit of dopamine available in your house.
Understanding these different archetypes of hunger is not just a fun intellectual exercise in biology. It is an incredibly practical daily tool.
Absolutely.
If you can cultivate the awareness to pause before you open the pantry and ask yourself, wait, is this biological ghrelin talking because I haven't eaten in 6 hours? Or is this just my brain demanding a dopamine hit because I am bored of folding laundry?
Just that single moment of pausing gives you the power to intercept the automatic habit and make a different choice.
But while we can try to outthink our psychological boredom or our stress, the reality is that we often unknowingly, drastically sabotage our entire biological hormonal system before we even leave the house in the morning.
Yes, we do. This is where we must pivot from internal chemistry to how our daily, seemingly innocuous lifestyle choices actively distort and break that chemistry.
And the most common, culturally pervasive, and biologically disastrous example of this daily sabotage is the breakfast trap.
The breakfast trap.
Let's paint a highly vivid, incredibly common picture for the listener.
Yeah.
Think about your standard rushed weekday morning. You wake up late, you are hurrying to get the kids ready or get to the office, and you grab a quick, highly processed breakfast.
Right?
You grab a bakery croissant, a muffin, a toasted bagel, or a bowl of heavily marketed sugary cereal with skim milk.
Very standard.
These are foods with an exceptionally high glycemic index. They are convenient, they taste fantastic, you eat them quickly, and you rush out the door. Walk us step by step, minute by minute, through the biochemical disaster that unfolds inside your body over the next 2 hours.
Okay, it is a fascinating, highly predictable, cascading chain reaction of hormones.
Yeah.
When you consume a meal composed primarily of simple, refined carbohydrates and sugar, like that muffin or cereal, it requires almost no mechanical or chemical effort from your digestive system to break it down.
There is no complex fiber matrix to slow things down.
Exactly. The carbohydrates are rapidly cleaved into simple glucose molecules in the stomach and upper intestine. This results in a massive, overwhelming flash flood of glucose directly into your bloodstream.
So within 30 minutes, your blood sugar levels violently skyrocket.
They do. And human biology fundamentally despises uncontrolled high blood sugar.
It is a state of acute physiological toxicity, right?
It is. High blood glucose damages blood vessels and nerves. So the body registers this rapid spike as a severe emergency.
Okay.
The pancreas, specifically the beta cells, detects this massive influx of glucose and panics.
It panics.
To protect the body, it responds by manufacturing and dumping a proportionally massive, overwhelming amount of insulin into the blood.
Because insulin is the hormone responsible for unlocking your muscle and fat cells, allowing them to absorb the glucose out of the bloodstream to be used for immediate energy or stored for later.
Exactly. But because the spike was so fast and violent, the pancreas overcompensates.
It brings a fire hose to put out a campfire.
That's a perfect way to describe it. The massive panic-induced dose of insulin works entirely too well.
It aggressively, rapidly shunts the glucose out of the blood and into the cells so fast that your blood sugar doesn't just gently return to a normal, healthy baseline.
No, it crashes straight through the floor, dropping far below optimal operating levels.
Oh.
In endocrinology, this state is known as reactive hypoglycemia.
And anyone who has ever experienced a mid-morning sugar crash at their desk knows exactly, viscerally, what reactive hypoglycemia feels like.
Okay.
You suddenly get brain fog, you lose your ability to concentrate, you feel deeply lethargic, maybe your hands get a little shaky, you get irritable.
And most importantly, you feel a sudden, intense, overwhelming craving for more food.
Because we have to look at it from the brain's perspective.
Right. The human brain relies almost entirely on a steady, uninterrupted supply of circulating glucose for fuel.
When it senses that rapid, plunging drop in blood sugar caused by the insulin overcorrection, it doesn't have the context to know that you just ate a massive croissant an hour ago.
No, just senses an acute, life-threatening fuel shortage in the blood.
It immediately registers an emergency, we are running out of fuel, find calories instantly signal.
Right. And while the brain is internally panicking about the plummeting blood sugar, what is physically happening down in the digestive tract?
Remember, that highly processed morning pastry contained absolutely zero complex fiber and virtually no satiating protein.
Those are the structural elements that physically slow down gastric emptying and keep the physical volume of food in the stomach.
Without them, the stomach processes the simple carbs and empties itself incredibly fast.
So right at the exact moment your blood sugar is violently crashing and the brain is sounding the starvation alarm, the stomach certainly realizes its walls are completely empty and unstretched.
In response, it begins forcefully pumping out
Ghrelin.
Ghrelin, the hunger alarm. So you have the brain panicking for quick energy due to low blood sugar, and the physical stomach screaming that it is entirely empty simultaneously.
It's a double whammy.
The wild irony here, the absolute tragedy of applied biological physics and chemistry, is that by choosing to eat that specific sugary pastry at 8 a.m., you mathematically, hormonally guaranteed that you would be significantly more ravenous at 10 a.m. than if you had simply skipped breakfast and eaten absolutely nothing at all.
It is a profound realization that removes the guilt from the equation.
Right.
Being starving and reaching for office donuts 2 hours after a sugary breakfast is not a moral failure. It is not because you are a gluttonous person or because you inherently lack willpower.
It is the predictable, inevitable, mathematical, biochemical consequence of the specific food you chose to put into a closed system governed by rigid hormones.
The architecture of the meal dictates the hormonal trajectory of the rest of your day.
But food isn't the only way we inadvertently sabotage this delicate system.
No, it's not.
When we look at lifestyle choices, there is a specific variable that fundamentally alters our biochemistry, and it involves a study that I think is going to genuinely shock a lot of people listening.
Oh, this one is fascinating.
We need to talk about the biology of sleep.
We culturally view sleep as a luxury or merely a passive period of inactivity where the body shuts down. But biologically, endocrinologically, sleep is an incredibly active, critical regulatory period.
Okay, so to understand how deeply sleep impacts appetite, we have to look at a landmark clinical study from 2004.
Yes. It was conducted by researchers Corinne Spiegel and Eve Van Cotter and published in the Annals of Internal Medicine.
And within the scientific community, it is widely considered a watershed moment that fundamentally changed how we understand the root causes of hunger and obesity.
Absolutely.
Walk us through the exact methodology of this study, because the design is what makes the results so undeniable.
Okay, so it was a highly controlled, crossover design clinical trial using healthy, young, lean male volunteers.
Okay.
They took these subjects into a sleep laboratory and put them through two completely different conditions. First, they allowed them to sleep fully and naturally, about 10 hours a night for 2 consecutive nights.
Okay, so fully rested.
Yes. They monitored everything. They inserted intravenous catheters so they could draw blood samples continuously throughout the day and night without waking them up.
Wow, that's thorough.
Very. Then a few weeks later, they brought those exact same individuals back into the lab and restricted their sleep to just 4 hours a night for 2 nights.
Just 4 hours.
Right. Again, they meticulously measured their circulating hormone levels and had the subjects report their subjective feelings of appetite on a highly detailed scale.
So it is the exact same people, the exact same genetic bodies, eating the exact same controlled diet in a lab, with the only variable being the duration of their sleep.
Exactly.
And the data that emerged from those blood draws is absolutely staggering.
It really is.
Just 2 days, just 48 hours of restricted sleep caused Ghrelin, the stomach's hunger alarm, to shoot up by 28%.
Up nearly 30%.
At the exact same time, in the exact same bloodstreams, leptin, the fat tissue satiety signal, plummeted by 18%.
The hormonal choir was completely, violently thrown out of tune.
The chemical voice screaming, "I am hungry," got nearly 30% louder, and the chemical voice whispering, "I am full," got nearly 20% quieter.
And this unseen physiological shift in the blood translated directly into conscious, undeniable human experience.
The participants reported an overall subjective increase in their daily appetite of 24%.
Yes, but the researchers didn't stop there.
Oh.
They didn't just ask them if they were hungry. They presented them with menus and asked them what specifically they were hungry for.
And what did they find?
The crucial context lies in the specific nature of the cravings. These sleep-deprived individuals were not suddenly craving larger portions of steamed vegetables or lean chicken breasts.
Of course not.
They demonstrated a profoundly elevated, almost uncontrollable desire for highly caloric, carbohydrate-dense, high-fat foods, sweets, salty chips, heavy pastas, pastries.
Why is that?
Because a human brain deprived of adequate sleep is a brain operating in a state of severe neurological deficit.
It is struggling to maintain basic cognitive function, and it desperately seeks the fastest, most biologically accessible form of dense energy to keep itself awake and functioning.
And in the modern environment, the brain knows that quick energy means refined sugar and processed carbohydrates.
I really want to pause and extrapolate on the implications of this because I think it directly challenges a massive toxic cultural narrative we have right now.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
We live in an era that deeply glorifies hustle culture. There is this pervasive, celebrated idea that sleeping 6 hours a night or less is a badge of honor.
Right, it shows how dedicated you are to your startup, how productive you are, how committed you are to the daily grind.
But if we look at the undeniable biology of the Spiegel and Van Cauter study, if you are chronically sleeping 6 hours a night, you are not just walking around tired.
No.
You are actively, permanently breaking your fundamental hunger and satiety signals.
That is exactly the terrifying implication of modern sleep habits. If you are chronically sleep deprived, you are forcing your body to operate in a continuous state of emergency.
You are walking through your life with constantly elevated ghrelin and chronically suppressed leptin.
You are fighting a powerful, unrelenting hormonal current that is physically pushing you every single day to consume more calories and specifically to consume the worst possible quality of calories.
You are attempting to outthink a biological imperative with sheer willpower.
Which brings us perfectly to the ultimate thesis of this entire deep dive.
Yes, the culmination of all this biology explains exactly why the concept of willpower when it comes to regulating appetite and eating behavior is fundamentally flawed.
It is scientifically inaccurate and, frankly, deeply psychologically damaging.
Blaming a lack of willpower for weight gain or poor diet is a cultural narrative that leaves millions of people feeling weak, guilty, and defeated every single time they eat.
The science urges us to violently question that narrative. When you find yourself unable to stop eating a bag of chips or uncontrollably craving junk food late at night, it is very rarely a failure of your moral character.
It is simply your hormones doing exactly what millions of years of evolution program them to do in a time of scarcity.
Maximizing calorie intake to prevent starvation, but executing that program in a modern environment designed for hyperabundance.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I absolutely love the analogy that emerges from this research to explain the willpower myth.
With a rock concert analogy.
Yes. Think about everything we have meticulously discussed today. You are sleeping 6 hours a night, so your ghrelin is inherently elevated and your leptin is suppressed.
You are chronically stressed from your job, so your cortisol is demanding dense sugar to fuel a fight-or-flight response that never happens.
You ate a highly processed pastry for breakfast, so you are currently in the depths of a reactive hypoglycemic crash.
And you are walking through a modern world engineered by brilliant food scientists, with bright neon packaging, perfectly engineered textures designed to melt in your mouth, and billions of dollars in targeted marketing.
All designed explicitly to make you overconsume.
And then, in the face of all of that overwhelming cascading chemical and environmental pressure, we look at an individual and expect them to simply use their willpower to choose a small garden salad over a slice of pizza.
Relying on willpower against that mountain of biological sabotage is like trying to hold a quiet, nuanced, intellectual conversation in the front row of a blaring heavy metal rock concert.
Right.
The problem isn't that you aren't trying hard enough to articulate your words clearly. The problem isn't your voice.
The problem is the room.
The room is simply too loud. The external environment and the internal chemistry are completely overpowering the signal.
It is a deeply empowering realization to understand that.
It really is.
Willpower is a finite cognitive resource. It is generated in the prefrontal cortex, and it biologically depletes throughout the day as you make decisions and resist impulses.
Hormones, on the other hand, are relentless.
They do not get tired. They do not clock out at 5 p.m. If you pit finite cognitive willpower against a relentless million-year-old hormonal survival drive, The hormones will eventually win,
Every single time.
every time.
So if we can't rely on willpower, we have to fix the room.
Yes.
We have to purposefully turn down the volume of the rock concert so our natural, subtle signals of satiety can actually be heard by the brain.
And the research doesn't just leave us with a depressing theory about how broken we are. It provides a highly practical blueprint.
It lays out 5 concrete, actionable, biologically grounded steps to work with your hormones, rather than constantly fighting a losing battle against them. Let's walk through this blueprint in detail.
Okay, step 1 in the biological blueprint is to radically shift how you view food. Stop counting calories and start focusing on macronutrients for hormonal signaling.
Okay, what does that look like?
Specifically, eat a significant amount of protein at every single meal. We talked about the intestinal choir earlier. This explicitly links back to the hormones CCK and PYY.
Right.
Protein is universally recognized as the most highly satiating macronutrient. When you consume it, it not only takes more physical energy to digest, the thermic effect of food, but it provides the exact amino acid raw materials the intestine requires to trigger the release of these powerful satiety signals.
Telling the brain to shut down the hunger drive.
Exactly. You're intentionally giving the biological system the exact raw materials it needs to send the I am full message.
Okay, step 2 in the blueprint. Prioritize complex fiber and low glycemic index foods. This is the direct, actionable antidote to the breakfast trap we discussed.
The primary goal here is to forcefully avoid the violent spikes and crashes in blood glucose that artificially trigger the release of ghrelin.
Right.
To understand fiber, picture a sponge versus a water slide. Simple sugars are a water slide. They rush instantly into the blood.
But when you eat complex fiber like broccoli, beans, whole intact grains, the fiber acts like a dense sponge.
Right. It traps the carbohydrates in a complex physical matrix. The digestive system has to work incredibly hard over hours to break that matrix apart.
Because of this, the glucose slowly, steadily trickles into the bloodstream.
The pancreas doesn't panic. It releases a gentle, moderate, highly manageable amount of insulin.
So there is no massive drop. There is no emergency starvation signal sent to the brain.
And the physical bulk of the fiber keeps the stomach stretched and full for hours. A stable breakfast truly produces a stable, hormonally balanced day.
Wow. Step 3 requires a massive cultural paradigm shift. You must protect your sleep as if it were an essential life-saving nutrient.
Because from a pure neuroendocrine perspective, it absolutely is. The 2004 Spiegel and Van Cauter study proved it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Right.
During deep sleep, your body physically clears metabolic waste from the brain through the lymphatic system, and it resets the sensitivity of your hormone receptors.
So getting a full 7 to 8 hours of high-quality sleep is not a luxury for the weak or the lazy.
Not at all. It is the literal biological prerequisite for operating with a hormonal system that is functioning correctly, rather than operating with a system that is actively, aggressively sabotaging your appetite.
You simply cannot out-diet or out-willpower chronic sleep deprivation.
No, you can't.
Step 4 in the blueprint. Learn to differentiate your hunger types. This requires implementing a brief moment of mindfulness before you consume.
It is about breaking the automatic, thoughtless reflex of eating.
Okay.
Before you reach for a snack, especially in the mid-afternoon or late at night, force yourself to pause for just 15 minutes and ask an honest, investigative question.
Is this biological? Is my stomach actually empty and have I not eaten in 6 hours?
Or is my cortisol elevated because of that stressful meeting? Is my dopamine low because I am bored of watching this television show?
Or am I simply eating because I walk past the kitchen counter and the food is physically proximate and visible?
Exactly. Over time, making that conscious distinction becomes a highly powerful neurological tool to interrupt the cycle of non-biological, emotionally driven eating.
You are taking the power back from the engineered environment.
Right. And finally, step 5, which ties directly into emotional hunger. Actively reduce your cortisol load.
Chronic psychological stress is a profound systemic endocrine disruptor.
It is. A constantly elevated HPA axis, the system that controls stress, distorts your appetite signals, pushing you constantly toward calorie-dense, hyperpalatable foods to self-medicate the stress response.
Finding actionable ways to manage and reduce chronic psychological stress, whether through daily physical exercise to burn off the mobilized glucose, meditation, or strictly setting boundaries with your work email after hours, is not just self-care.
No, it is a direct, highly effective medical intervention in your nutritional biology.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and look back at the incredible complex ground we have covered in this deep dive
We
today.
covered a lot.
We started with a very simple, relatable question about why our hunger feels so unpredictable. And we traveled deep into the internal, microscopic corporate mailroom of the human body.
We listened to the stomach's localized ghrelin alarms.
We followed those molecules up to the chickpea-sized hypothalamus command center in the brain, and we explored the vast warehouses of fat cells desperately trying to send leptin signals through the deafening noise of metabolic resistance.
We tracked how a simple, seemingly innocent morning croissant causes a violent cascade of insulin and crashes.
And we saw the undeniable clinical data of how sacrificing just 2 hours of sleep literally chemically rewires your cravings for the next 48 hours.
It's all connected.
Most importantly, we have completely, thoroughly dismantled the toxic idea that your appetite is a measure of your moral discipline. It is chemistry. It is ancient biology.
And understanding the mechanics of that system is the very first necessary step to mastering it.
Understanding the actual biology fundamentally changes the entire relationship you have with your own body.
It really does. It moves you away from a place of constant internal conflict, shame, and guilt, and transitions you into a place of profound understanding, forgiveness, and actionable strategy.
As we finally wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought. Something to really mull over and observe as you navigate the rest of your day.
Consider this reality. The design of modern food engineering, the millions spent formulating hyper-processed foods to hit the exact bliss point of your taste buds, the relentless algorithm-driven marketing.
Combined with our incredibly fast-paced, high-stress, chronically sleep-deprived modern work culture.
All of this, when viewed together, seems accidentally, or perhaps we're being highly cynical about the food industry, purposefully designed to perfectly hijack and exploit your ancient survival hormones.
You are living in an environment explicitly built to keep the rock concert blaring at maximum volume.
So the question to you is, what is one small, seemingly insignificant change you can make to your daily environment today?
What is one actionable way you can begin to turn down the volume of that room to ensure your beautiful, complex biological control panel is finally working for you rather than against you?
It's something to think about.
Such a powerful, actionable question to end on. If you ever find yourself staring into the fridge, feeling like you are starving just an hour after lunch, take a deep breath and remember, it is not a lack of willpower.
No, it's not.
Your ancient internal messengers are just reacting to the noisy, modern room you put them in. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. You are now armed with the hard, fascinating chemistry, not just empty guilt, to understand and optimize your own biology. We will see you next time.